Bitcoin is seemingly falling off a cliff, and many are worried that it will break below 25,000 and then will go much, much lower. Now, am I worried? Well, no, and I'll share why. Also, we have Paul from Definity joining us today so that we can look at the markets affecting crypto and get a much broader macro picture, and then we'll dive deep into some specific altcoin suggestions. Welcome to the Crypto Rain channel and our family. If you're looking for crypto news without context, or you're looking for panic selling and FOMOing in, you can find that in a lot of other places, but you won't find that here. If you, like me, came into crypto because you realized the potential for life-changing gains over a 4 to 8 year period, and you're looking for discussions on becoming a solid, unshakable crypto investor, well, you're in exactly the right place, in the right family, the Rainmaker family. Now, what is it? 2020, I created this channel because I was once new to the crypto space back in 2017. And back then I was looking for a crypto channel and network or group that understood crypto as an investment and discussed important things like investment cycles and the projects, the pros and cons of these projects, maybe a lot of interviews with the teams, looking at the risks and guess the upside if it came together well. And I didn't find what I was looking for, so I created it. And now I say we create it because it isn't just me anymore. It's a family of Rainmakers, and you can see them coming in the chat. You will also see some in our free Telegram group. The link to that is below, and you will definitely find them in our private Patreon group that allows you access to the Rainmaker private Discord, which is where the best discussion and best info is. There are other benefits too, but you'll have to join us to find out what those are. Do note that I'm not a financial advisor, and Paul is not a financial advisor either. We're both investors, and we think like investors, and just sharing with you some of our opinions on some things. So if you haven't already, make it rain on that like button and strap in for the show because Paul is joining us, and boy, Paul, Bitcoin has fallen off a cliff. I'm panicking. I'm running around screaming with my head cut off. It's going to zero, right?
Yeah. It's going to zero with some ones in front of it. That's where the zeros are going to be. 1000000. Look, I think the problem is we're in August markets. We said it last week and the week before. Of course, we expect this sort of shenanigans when the markets are thin and people panic. You've got the main dealers who go on holiday, the number twos see what's going on, and any sort of short-term move they panic into. We had the Michael Burry story that came out at the same time. Market was maybe looking for a bit of a correction. I mean, I'm talking broadly, not necessarily Bitcoin and other things, but I think we need to put all of this into some form of context. And the context is that risk on is still very much alive, and the equity markets which govern this are very much in bull markets. There's going to be a lot of excess liquidity coming into the system that will eventually go back into these currencies and so the risk on currencies and also into crypto assets. Doesn't feel like it, I know, but it never does. And the market climbs a wall of worry. So we have to put all of this into a longer term context. We can come back and have a look at it in 3 months' time when it's all forgotten. And maybe, look, it might take a bit longer than that before markets are really burning higher. But when it happens, everyone will forget about it. And I said that before about the equity markets earlier this year, and probably the early part of this year, when there was a lot of fear around March time. And we were talking about the debt ceiling and all that sort of stuff, and how can you be bullish, and et cetera, et cetera. But if you look at the big picture charts, it puts these moves into context. The volatility for Bitcoin had dropped quite aggressively, and we were waiting for a breakout. Now, just the breakout pushed lower, which I'm bullish. So that wasn't the direction I expected, but it wasn't necessarily completely unexpected because that happens. So what I'm saying is that there are times when the market looks a bit more balanced and you have to tread a bit more carefully because it can get pushed around a lot. But the long-term direction is still one to the upside, as the charts show. And I think it's important at times like these to focus on it and remember that it's actually good that people are having these fears and doubt about whether Bitcoin is or whether the crypto markets are the place to invest, because it means that they're not overly long, which is usually what causes the market to become overbought, and then you get a massive correction, a huge correction, and we could be in some form of major bear market. And I don't think we are, but we will talk about that when the time comes. We will cross that bridge when we have run this bull market's course, and I can pretty much guarantee everyone else will be bearish. Sorry, everyone else will be super, super bullish and giving you all the use cases as to why you should be buying. And technically, we'll be saying, no, that's it. It's time to get out.
Yeah, this is the top. This is the topping pattern. It's signaling this. Be careful. Be wary. Don't be so bullish. Prices have gone crazy, and people say, no, it'll go another 50x from here. And because that happens every bull market. I get excited when I see this kind of pullback, because this usually happens. Now, usually there's some kind of better story or fear behind it, but I think they generated the best stories they could to try to get people bearish, and then they just manipulated the price. Realize that the Bitcoin market is still really, really small for big players, that they can push around the price where they want it to be. And what's interesting is they can sell to get those support levels broken, and then the momentum carries it much farther down, so they can then rebuy. Plus, usually they'll take some shorts in the meantime. So they can make some big money by pushing it around, and a well-timed article or two pushing, as well as a bunch of shorts, and then selling off some of their Bitcoin, being able to rebuy that back. They can make a ton of money. And so there's all this bearishness. And when you look back at what the last bear market looked like, and look at 2020. And a lot of people look back and they say, oh my gosh, if I could go back in time, I would buy those bottoms. And the truth is, most people miss buying at lows because there's a whole bunch of worry associated with it. There's a whole bunch of articles that, oh my gosh, it's going to go to 12,000. And so they don't buy. And then it goes the other way, and they end up missing anywhere near the bottom again. Like the bottom, what did we hit on Bitcoin just last December? Was it? Gosh, it was all the way down at 15,500. And now we're all the way up at 26, and people are scared that it will, break below the 25,000 support level, and it could. And then it might come down to somewhere in the low 20s. But I think the bottom for the cycle is in, and that anywhere in this range is really, really good. Of course, I'm personally not buying a lot of Bitcoin because I'm in the riskier assets. I love Bitcoin, and I plan to hold some long term. I'm just in the riskier stuff because I think we're entering the bear market, and the riskier stuff just goes up more than Bitcoin does.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's a few things at play here, and we can have a look at those to give you the full macro picture of what's actually happening. One of the main problems I think we're seeing in the short term is that this dollar move has been fairly aggressive short term. I mean, not long term. It's not significant from a long term perspective, but it's biting in right at the wrong time when the market's a bit fearful and easy to push around. But anything that goes down fast can come back up fast, and I really do think that we could see quite a big bounce back. It wouldn't take much in terms of news flow just to change the sentiment. But if we look at the equity indices, I look at the equity indices because this is the main indicator of whether there is risk on in the pipeline, and they're the most sensitive to the economies. Each country will be influenced by how much liquidity there is, how much risk on assets. The more assets you have, the more your shares are going up, the more profits are being made, the more money there is for other things. So it's not rocket science. It's not complicated. It's just, what is the trend? Now, you can look at a chart and read it in every different way you want, but it's only the way that the market is telling you. And in my view, there's only one way to read it, but you can people look at charts and then come up with their own opinions afterwards. And just because I'm looking at a chart, again, it doesn't mean I'm going to be right. It just means that this is the probability. And when sentiment and what the charts are saying are diverging, that's a really good sign. That usually means that you have a greater percentage of being right. So the Dow, I know it's only representative of 30 stocks, but it's still 30 big stocks, and it's in an upward trend, and it's come back to support. This support area here is a really good one. It was resistance before, and so it's massive area here. I agree that we could see a bit more to the downside. That's possible. But these are levels where if you'd missed the buy point, you're actually getting another bite of the cherry. So I can see between where we are and like 33,700 to being an area where there's probably going to be some buying coming in. S&P is much better from a long-term perspective and from a broader perspective. Again, yes, there's only a few stocks that are pushing the market up, and some of the others are just going sideways. But still, this is what we're dealing with. The S&P 500 is in an upward trend. It's working its way towards this all-time high, and it's had a little correction, but the size of the correction is not enough to change the trend. Now, that may be the case further down the line. And as I've said before, if that is the case, I've got plenty of time to change my view. But at the moment, I've been bullish on this for a long time. And, from these lows and from this parallel trend line, we've been looking for a breakout, for it to move higher, which it has done. And it's only just retraced some of that move. So I see this as a retracement in a bull market rather than a new bear market. And if that changes, we'll see it. But for the moment, that's still working nicely. Now, UK, which is where I am, volatility, but we're not far off highs. We've got Italy, that's hit a high, come back down, still going for new highs. DAX index, it's volatile near a new high. So it's just going sideways, but that's certainly not bearish. It might go down a bit, but the overall trend is still up. It's just consolidating on this upward move. I mean, we could go through all of those, but let's jump to the Asian markets. We've seen what's happened with Japan. The area where the region which is in most inverted commas trouble is China and Hong Kong, and their markets are sticking out like a sore thumb. But it is very likely that there will be some form of policy response from the Chinese to push their market up. So they're either going to cut rates or start some form of stimulus package. They've got plenty of scope to do that, and they're most likely to do it. Now, technically, we are still above a major low in October last year. So it kind of reflects what the chart of the crypto assets look like. They made a low around November and have rallied and have come back again. It's not a one-to-one correlation, but it's a similar setup where the low has been put in down here and the market is higher. So I'm not going to turn uber bearish until we at least break this 12,240 and the market has turned bearish, like really bearish. So usually the market doesn't turn bearish and the market falls aggressively. It's usually the market turns really bearish and then a few weeks go by, it might go a bit lower, shake a few people out, then it hits the low and starts rallying. So there's a bit more work to do, I would agree. And timing wise, we have to still be careful, but I think there's plenty of scope for this to turn around, and I think it will. If you look at the Australian market, this is heavily influenced on what's going on in China and demand in China. This is beautiful. I mean, this is a lovely pattern, the way it's hitting up against a high. Look at these lows rising and pushing higher and higher. It's looking good. It's looking really good. So I think this will break this high, and it will pop 9,000 next year or the year after. That's where it looks like it's heading to. So the region for me does not look as bearish as people are making out. So it is important that these asset markets are rising for me in order for the liquidity to flow into the crypto assets. So if we look at what's actually happening with the dollar index, as you know, we're bearish. We're expecting this to go lower. have been since 115. We were bullish before that, actually, all the way down here. So we're looking for the trend to go up, and then around here we were calling for a top. So we're way off that top. So there's plenty of scope for the trend to continue downwards. But what's causing the problem is this rally here. So we thought a break of 100 spot 82 would set off the downward trend. So I think that wrong-footed a few people who went short, including me, and then had to reverse out the position and wait for this rally to peter out. Now, this was a great place for it to stop, and it's gone through the 200-day moving average, it's gone through the trend line, which is not great. It's a bit frustrating that it's done that, but it's not enough to turn the chart bullish. You know, we're not going to just suddenly go bullish because it's done that. From a longer term perspective, this could just be a short-term break, false break of that trend line, and then it comes back down again. So, and if we take it from the start of the year, it's really just been sideways, and that's through a rate rising cycle from the US, who have been, inverted commas, ahead of the curve. Any pause, any signs of pause, any weakness in inflation, and lo and behold, that will probably all start to happen as we get towards the election year next year. Rates will be either going down or definitely staying where they are, and suddenly there's a boom, and that's what we're looking for. The dollars go down, all the other asset markets go up, and these lows will look like, in terms of Bitcoin and other markets, will look like a massive buying opportunity, or in retrospect will look like a massive buying opportunity, but it never feels like that at the time, and that's always part of the market psychology.
Yeah, exactly. That's why it's so hard to counter trade, and a lot of people can't do it because they get caught up in the emotions of everything and just haven't had enough experience yet. So what's great is they get to hear some ideas here, and sometimes they'll take actions that help them counter trade the market, and sometimes they'll be too scared to. But over a while, they'll really start to recognize those patterns, become solid, unshakable investors over time, which I think should be everyone's goal that's in the crypto space, is learn how to be an investor, think like an investor, because that's where you learn how to take, I guess, the better odds decisions, where the odds are for you rather than against you all the time.
Yeah, what tends to happen with that is people sort of jump in at the wrong time, lose some money, then say this isn't for me, drop out, and then suddenly they see it rallying, they'll ignore it, and they'll say, no, I'm not going to get involved. And then those people who then capitulate near the high, they're the indicators that the market is then going to come back down again. So it is a psychological game, and it's no disrespect for people who trade like that, but that's almost how the market has to operate, because you can't automatically, it can't make sense, because if it did make sense, the amount of people that would make money would be 50-50 pretty much, or maybe 60-40, but it's more like 90% of people get it wrong. And because of the nature of what you're dealing with here, it has to be much, much harder than doing any other job. So I know that's difficult, perhaps difficult for people to get their head around, but it really is. Otherwise, the money markets would just be an ATM that everyone could just tap into whenever they wanted and just easily pick some money up. It doesn't work like that. It can't work like that. In the same way that you might think you have to work hard to get a degree in something. You can't just be given one, although I know you can get internet ones or whatever they are. But anyway, putting that aside, anything that's worth having, it has got to have some work attached to it. It's got to have some difficulty, and it's no different with the financial markets.
Yeah, a lot of people see crypto and they think it's easy money or magic internet money, and what it is just an investment class or an asset class. Crypto gives us access to early stage venture capital like investing. And so for people to make good money in this, to be able to be consistent at it, you want to learn how to analyze the projects behind it, the teams behind it, where the price is relative to other things, what is the sentiment, and you're learning these different things, and they help you make better guesses where the odds are for you rather than against you. So like many people have seen some of the movies that if you learn how to play 21 and to count cards, you can win more than you lose. What you're doing is you're learning how to count cards. And so most people who play blackjack lose money. That's why casinos make so much. That's why they can have the lights on 24/7. And so you're learning how to stack the odds in your favor, which is great. Right now, we're at a period that I love. I absolutely adore periods like this, where almost nobody who's not way deep in the crypto space is talking about crypto and Bitcoin other than the articles fudding it. And I love that space and time in any market. So when I was in real estate, I love that period in real estate. I was like, oh my gosh, I can remember a time in Phoenix, Arizona, you could buy a 4-year-old home that was almost new. It had been foreclosed on, and say it was built in 2005. It was now 2009 or 2010. It had been foreclosed on. And you could pick up that house that used to sell for $200,000+. You could pick it up for $50,000, put $10,000 in, make it rent ready for $1,000. And people were fighting the real estate market. It's a terrible time to buy. Oh my gosh, it's horrible. The last thing you want to do is get into real estate. And I'm like, what world do you guys live in? You could have put $10,000 down, have a $40,000 mortgage, put $10,000 into improvements, rent it out for $1,000 a month. You get all your money back within like 2 years of renting it out. Your cash flow on that is extreme. And guess where those houses are now? They're like $350,000. And yet everyone was saying it was the worst time to be in real estate. What I don't like about real estate is, man, that was 2010. It is now 13 years later. It took 13 years for the price to go 7x. We're in the crypto space. Now, thankfully, then you could use some leverage in that space. I don't recommend leverage in crypto. So in this space, gosh, what kind of returns could you have made in crypto in, say, 13 years if you had bought Bitcoin 13 years ago when it was just coming out for like a quarter or less, right? That's why I love this market. But it takes some patience. It takes some time. It takes some counter trading in the market. And when others are fearful, I get greedy. And I know I didn't make that saying up, but that's just how I operate. So I get really excited during these times. I get really excited in the time that's to come when I've made a whole bunch of great positions and then the market really starts taking off. That time is really exciting, but it's only extremely exciting when you've been around during this time and you've taken good positions. In my opinion, like that's how I think and how I look at it. And that's what's made life-changing gains for me in crypto in just 6 years.
The altcoins almost feel like they are leveraged because they are so volatile. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
You know, if that's the volatility that's what you pay for, really. You can put small amounts that have big moves, which you couldn't get anywhere else. So
yeah,
like
where else can you get like 100x gains?
Yeah, exactly.
You can lose 100% of what you put in an altcoin, or usually next to that. They rarely actually go to zero, but you can lose almost 100%. But you can also get 100x gains if things go really, really well for you. That's not available in most places without trading on massive leverage. What I hate about trading on leverage is you can be right, but be wrong just for a second before you're right, and it wipes out your position. And that's why I don't do leverage in crypto. I just hold the asset itself. But you can get the kind of gains that would normally only be able to happen with massive leverage without being wiped out if it just goes down temporarily because you're actually holding the asset.
Yeah.
What else are you seeing in? Oh, go ahead, Paul.
No, I was going to say that's really interesting what you're saying about the property market and about the psychology. It fits perfectly. That I find that everything seems to mirror what you do in the markets. Whatever you do in real life, there's some way that it mirrors in the markets. But yeah, it's really interesting what you say about leverage. It's definitely emotionally magnification of your position. So and there's no other way around it. If you've got leverage and things are going down, you are going to really feel it. And that's the problem. That's what creates such big moves in markets like this, where people panic out at the wrong time, and it creates air pockets, and vice versa. So, and it doesn't help to have more money, if that makes sense, because all that happens is you just lose more quickly. So there's an old saying in the trading game that how do you make $1 million trading? Start with 10. And it's actually said in lots of other areas as well, like how do you make $1 million in the film industry? You know, start with 10 or more, start with 100 probably. But that's why, because you get leveraged out at the wrong time, and you can't. It's very difficult because of the news flow to focus on the long term, because the news flow is there like YouTube Shorts to try and keep you going for more information, short-term information, headlines, grabbing moves to keep you clicking and looking at the adverts. Whereas if you can get away from that noise, and that's what I like about charts don't have any emotion on them. So that's why when you look back, you think, oh, okay, you know, that trend was actually up, but it didn't seem like it at the time because everyone was talking about how the world was going to end. But actually the markets just merrily continued higher. And I find that removes the emotion for me. I mean, you can't ever be completely removed from it and immune to it, because of course, you know, you'll hear from it about what's going on, whether you like it or not, but you just learn to try and tune it out. The Michael Burry thing was interesting because, you know, he is somebody who I respect, but I still think ultimately it doesn't matter who you are, you can get it wrong. You know, Warren Buffett did some big trades in gold and silver, I think, and just got it totally wrong. Michael Burry's very, very smart, but he may be wrong. And it's what he does when he's wrong that's important, rather than whether he's right at this point in time. So he might be, I might be wrong. And this might be.
He also took some very specific trades in that. Somebody clarified after our talk last week, and they're like, well, specifically he did this, and they put that in the comments. I think he took some specific trades on specific stock indexes, and he went massively short on them. We'll see. He called the reverse in the housing market early, and it almost cost him everything. But he stuck with his bets and ended up being right. But he almost went completely illiquid before being right. And that's the problem with leverage, is like sometimes you don't have enough, the ability to be patient long enough to not get wiped out even when you're right. And so is he right this time? Well, we'll see. It's going to play out. Why not watch? And it will probably play out over the next 6 months to a year. By a year from now, we should have a good idea if he was right or not. So we'll see. I tend to think that the equities will at some point go down, and the real estate market go down too. And just because my spidey senses go off when something runs up massively for a long time, nothing goes up for forever. And both of those markets have gone up so much for so long that it's a concern. For example, on the real estate market, I'm still in touch with a bunch of investors and other things. And one of the things that I watch at that's an indicator of, gosh, this has to reverse, is there's way too many people investing in real estate. There's way too many people flipping. There's way too many people buying and holding, because what happens is the market goes up, is more people come into this space and they're like, oh, this is great. This is great. And then it gets really heavy. So many flippers, so many things. And then as the market starts to reverse, it washes out a bunch of those people. We saw that in the crypto market. We saw a whole bunch of new YouTube channels start in 2021 as the market got hot. And you've seen a lot of those YouTube people get wiped out, even some decent sized channels. One capitulated just this week, and he's probably got the biggest channel covering metaverses and metaverse games. And yet he just said he's moving on to cover stocks, which I love capitulation, right? So on the real estate side, people ask me if real estate is a good investment now. And I say, question mark, question mark, question mark. Like, I've got all these red flags by it. I'm not investing in real estate right now. Will I in the future? Yes. And in the future, when everyone's telling me it's the worst investment ever, I will be buying more real estate again. Now, probably commercial properties, because I don't want to deal with traditional tenants ever again if I don't have to. But we're not at that point where people are like, oh my gosh, real estate is the worst thing ever. In that point always comes back around. Just real estate takes a long time. In crypto, we get this very accelerated cycle, which I love. You don't have to be as patient. The swings are so massively volatile, especially in the altcoins, where you can buy and crap, it goes down some more. And so you see your position fall by like 80%. And you're like, oh, this is terrible. And then the rains come in and the bull market picks up, and then you're up 30x on your position. And you're like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. There just isn't normally something that can do those kind of swings in such an accelerated time frame. So that's why I am absolutely in love with crypto. All right.
Yeah.
Zombie
the
said,
the ability to get in and out. Yeah, exactly. Learning is expensive. Well, that's a phrase in the markets about education. It's if you, because I teach technical analysis, I have done, and I would say, if you think education's expensive, you should try ignorance. And
that's hilarious.
And that's and it's amazing. I've seen people lose millions because they just wouldn't learn to read a simple chart. And I'm not saying that means that they would make millions, but at least they would stop them losing. So there we go.
One of the other things I think about all the time, that it's not what we don't know that hurts us near as much as what we think we know that's wrong that hurts us the most. And I found that myself, right? That I've bought into some things that bought into some ideas or whatever that were based on a little bit of truth packed with a bunch of not true. And then buying into that cost me a lot, because then you argue a position that's fundamentally flawed and without recognizing the flaws. Justin says, Peter out sounds like a purple district speak. Is that UK thing?
Oh, what? The phrase Peter out? Yeah, Peter out is just it's not like Peter the name. It just means it slowly stops. Yeah. It is English.
Is that a place in London or something?
No. It's
Purple Brick District.
I don't know. Did I use the phrase Peter out? I'm not sure. I think Peter out just means it will generally start to. Just look it up. It's English. It just means
we use that. We use that. All right, I've heard that a lot as well. But I didn't know if the Purple Brick District was a place in the UK or London.
I'm not sure what that means, to be quite honest, Justin. So I'm not sure if that was you or me, but probably me. But just let me know, and I'll try and clarify it.
Hey, good to see you too. 158 beats. Let's jump into now. Any other charts you want to share before we get into some of the altcoin stuff?
Yeah. Well, we didn't actually look at the Bitcoin and Ethereum chart, so let's just have a look at that. So where we were last week, so there's me saying, look, here's the correction, and I would look for this to hold and then break higher. Market didn't do that, as we know. This 28,547 level was a big stop loss area, so it meant there had been some buying, and that's where the stop losses hit. So we got this downdraft, but it's still within this consolidation, which is still part of this upward trend. So next support 25,212, already a bit of buying coming in ahead of there. So let's see if that can hold. I'd be buying here with a stop below. The moving average trends are up, and so overall, yeah, it's a bigger correction than we would have liked, but it's still within the parameters of a normal market correction that we've seen before. We're waiting for that acceleration, and that's when things start to go parabolic. So it may have been a bit early for that, but if this is the shakeout that then gets people into, or sort of slingshots the market back up into a parabolic move, then great. It'd be perfect from a market psychology point of view. Ethereum was a little bit surprising there, only because we had this nice triangular constriction and it was getting ready to move. So I guess it was a volatility play, if nothing else. but it broke this trend line. It was such a nice trend line. It was very close to it. Would have been very tempting to buy it just on that trend line, but you've had to stop out as soon as it cracked it. We had the trend line and the 200-day moving average right at that point. So there would have been some buying there. But if as a short-term trade, you'd have to exit as soon as it shows that it's not holding. But again, this is overall still a basing formation. This is creating a platform for a much stronger rally. So I'm still looking for the upside here. This is the next support area, which 1420, 1430 as the market goes up. As the time goes on, obviously that line goes up. It's reading oversold on the RSI. So that might encourage some people in. But we've already seen like a panic sell, a big spike, which is usually a sign that it's been overdone and it's time to turn. But I'd just be holding just for a little bit because, I'm not going to rush into buying this until it's settled down a bit more. I'm not trying to catch the absolute low. I don't mind if it goes sideways for a bit, maybe even a little bit lower, and then starts to go up again. And again, if this level here, this 1734, buy it through there or even through this resistance, or if it gets back over the 200-day moving average, I prefer to buy into strength rather than trying to catch a falling knife in the short term. But again, more importantly for me, is the way this looks. If I switch it to a weekly chart, the structure is still one of a base. And although this has been quite a sharp reversal and it doesn't feel very nice, it's not out of the ordinary of things that it's done before. So the market is in a reversing phase, if you like, a basing phase, and that's certainly possible. So it's not a new low, etc., etc., and it's rising from this low here in June 22. Trend has been going up, made a higher low here. That's still all in place. So yeah, it's a bit disappointing that it hasn't got moving yet, but in terms of timing, we're expecting it to accelerate as we move into next year anyway.
Yeah. So I like to think of these as amazing dollar cost average opportunities. I want to share a chart. This is the ETH chart from before, and this is ETH had run up all the way to like 1200 or 1400 in the bull market. So around mid-January, it went all the way to 1400, and then it just had this savage pullback, and it only shows $80 here, but I remember buying ETH for like $70 right in this time frame. Then it went up, and then it came back. And see, there's often a savage pullback before a bigger run, and we saw that savage pullback. Now, there was a much better story that helped create that savage pullback back in the last bear market, and that story was, oh my gosh, all the businesses are shutting down because of the pandemic. Everything's going to go crazy. Everyone's going to starve to death. Everyone's going to die. And so everything, the stock market, everything dumped, crypto did. And it gave you this brief window when ETH went all the way down to like $90 again. Now, it's easy to see now that we're much farther ahead that this was an amazing buying opportunity. But realize at the time that the FUD was just unreal high, and people wondering if our society was ever going to exist in the world again. So people look back and they're like, oh my gosh, if I could buy ETH at $100, I would. But that's because you know where the future is. And so you wouldn't be taking any risks. Also, since we don't have time machines, that opportunity is completely gone from us for forever. All we can do is look at where things are now and say, okay, is this a buying opportunity or is this a selling opportunity? And for me, these are buying opportunities for dollar cost averaging more. And I'm grateful for these kind of pullbacks. And then, I expect or hope that ETH will have a much brighter future than where it is now. All right. Any other charts you're looking at before we jump into some of the altcoin picks?
No, not really. Just I think that covers quite a lot. Yeah, it's just I suppose just one other. It's the Japanese yen against the US dollar, and that was because the yen was the weakest currency or one of the weakest currencies against the US dollar. So I thought it may lead the turn and it's had quite a nice beginning. Little double top there, but nothing really major. But it's at least showing some strength against the US dollar, and some others are starting to nibble a bit. So that's interesting. I like that, but let's see how that develops. There's still a bit more to go.
Yeah, I like these kind of areas. Johnny and I think the same. I hope we don't pump for another 6 months, need to fill my bags. And so some people get impatient. And the reason is because they've taken some positions. They don't really want to put in more. They want to see how it plays out. And they don't want a dollar cost average in more. So they're just like, oh my gosh, we need the price to turn around. And they become very impatient on that. Relatively, the crypto cycles are pretty short, though they feel long week to week because all our emotions go up and down, sometimes on a daily or weekly basis. But it still happens relatively quick. I would prefer to see it take another 6 months to really pump, form a better base where I can dollar cost average more, and then I can take a bigger upside because the bigger the base, usually the bigger the swings up. Well, let's jump into some altcoin picks. We're starting off with a chart that is going very different than most of the market, and that would be OMI.
Yes, indeed. Yes, OMI, which obviously was one that was underperforming prior, and then is now woken up, if you like. And we got this trigger. Let's just expand that out, because the trigger level was, for me, 6694 across here. That's where we had the downward trend, then the consolidation, the basing pattern, and then the breakout from resistance. So you've seen it play out. It's actually very interesting how that's all happened. Downward trend. This is why I wait for the consolidation before jumping in, because I don't know where the low is going to be, even though it may look to be a great buy. We need other people to jump in and say, yeah, this really is, and for value for me to be shown, because I'm not looking at the fundamentals. So I don't know whether the fundamentals are deteriorating or improving. And this tells me that things are looking much better once we get a breakout from a key resistance point and the development of the next new trend. So whilst we're above that trigger point, 6694, I'm going to be bullish. So I'm going to stay bullish from that breakout. And what I like about the chart here is it's forming potentially a nice triangular constriction, which is usually a good continuation pattern before the next move up. So we're having this kind of sideways compression where people who have been long it are going, thank God it's gone up. I'm just going to use this to bail out. And they're bailing out their positions against some other people who are saying, look, I've missed the move and I'm going to buy it. So the battle is on, if you like, and we'll see who wins it. But the trend is turning, or has turned, certainly from a medium term perspective. And for me, it remains in the buy zone. So I'm going to stick with that. Yeah, it could come back to this trend line again, or maybe even a little bit below, just because the broader macro scene has been a bit uncertain in the short term. But I think this is going to pretty much do its own thing, as it always does. So, so the trend is up. We're going to go with it.
Yeah, I remember a lot of people complaining about OMI because some other things were going up, and they're like, OMI is going down. And it's nice when you have things trading at different times than other things. I appreciate that. And that's part of the reason I like diversification, because sometimes certain things in my holdings will pump. Like earlier this year, we had a big run up on AI crypto stuff. And one of the projects I had, it wasn't even truly an AI crypto project, but it's related to it. And so it ran up like 10x, which was amazing because a bunch of other things were down. So I was able to sell that off and I was able to buy other things cheap. Why? Because sometimes things run at different times. So I love the fact that OMI runs at different times than a lot of other things. Not that I'm taking profits at this zone, but it is interesting. Often we'll get a W, which will confirm a double bottom. And sometimes we don't. So I don't know whether it's going to trade like this and then break to the downside. And it'll often come back down for a lower or a higher low. And then it will come back up and also often again come back and wick down ever so quickly, and then it's off to the races, and it forms this nice double bottom. But sometimes it just breaks up from here. So how it'll play out, I don't know. I like anything below 0.1 cents, and right now it's 0.0829 cents, so it's almost 20% below 0.1 cents. And my expectation for this is I hope it hits a penny, maybe even 10 pennies during the next bull market. And yeah, I think it will. I don't have a magic crystal ball to know for sure that it will. But that's why I'm really heavy on this token. And I love this token in the ecosystem and the team behind it. And so this is one I watch really, really closely. So for me, it's a buy. It's still under 0.1 cents. This is all a green zone. I hope it comes back down for a second bite at the apple at those really juicy prices. It was really nice picking it up for 0.06 cents. It was a dream come true buy opportunity for me. So I love those really amazing prices. I don't know that I even got very much at the lows. I got a little bit at the below 0.06 cents in the 0.055 or 0.056 range, which was amazing. But anything under 0.1 cents, in my opinion, I really, really like and am excited about. Let's take a look at the next one, which is Theta. Now, Theta has been out of the narrative for a very long time, which I love. Theta has a really strong team, probably even a really strong future. And yet, gosh, it's been out of the narrative since 2021, and it's retraced to amazing prices. I was buying this during the last bear market around 7 cents, and then I'd sell it at 14 cents. And then when it went up to 21 cents, I sold the rest of it rather than hanging on, and it went all the way up to like $14. And I was like, shoot. So I would love another bite at the apple on Theta for a really cheap price, and it's getting to amazing prices that probably it should never hit, but the pendulum usually swings too far.
From a technical point of view, we are approaching some very good support around 55 cents. And also 55 cents is one of those psychological levels. And so we need to see how it reacts here. I'd be waiting personally, because this trend is still down and we haven't formed a higher low to confirm that it's changing. And it's underperformed a bit, as you were saying, against the majors and or other altcoins. So not much evidence of buying happening just at this point. But in its positive corner, it is still way above its 2020 lows. You know, this was a massive base here. So it's nice that it's correcting rather than trending, making fresh lows, which some markets have been doing, of course. So it looks like it's in a corrective phase. We just need to get this to turn around before we can jump in, show some support. One could nibble a small amount just as a marker, but for me, I think I would just still wait. Let me just draw in this other line. So we've got this accelerated trend line. So we've got the main one, and then this is the acceleration of the downward trend. So at the very least, I'd want it to break that or above this 85 cents level to form some form of higher low, or to break a recent resistance to break that pattern. So it's a good time to be looking at it, that's for sure, because we don't want to wait for it to already sort of traded over $1 and then gone, okay, it's now ready to break this trend line and we could even miss it. So it's good to have it on the radar for sure. But I'm going to wait just a little bit longer, and even if I have to take it over $1, that's fine by me, because if it's going to start re-correcting or going back up to its high, there's plenty of room for it to rejoin the bull market with everything else. So yeah, it is a wait, but I think it is a good one to have on the radar, as I say.
What I like about Theta is it shows how sometimes things come into the narrative and they hit really, really hard. And that is definitely not a buying time for me. Back when it was in the narrative, so many people were talking about it. all the major crypto YouTube channels, and that was all near all-time highs. And even they continued talking about it when it was still up in these high ranges. And you'll notice almost nobody talking about it now, like almost nobody, which is when I really start to notice things like nobody's talking about it. Great. Now, interestingly enough, when you look at the tokenomics behind it, its market cap is now under $1 billion, which makes me happy. This definitely is a blue chip. At one point, it was in the top 10 market caps, if I'm remembering right. And it's fallen way, way, way below that now. And so it's an amazing buy. Hold on. Ooh, got to sneeze. No. All right. This is like a lingering need. There we go. The total supply and the circulating supply are the same. Now, interestingly enough, this shows that CoinMarketCap's math calculations aren't correct, because it's showing its market cap be 637 million and its fully diluted market cap being 634 million. Oh, it now just corrected itself, interestingly enough, right as I was saying that. Okay, it's off again. That's interesting. But there aren't more tokens vesting. They're all in supply. But if you hold Theta, you then get T-Fuel as a reward, and that's the fuel for the network. So it is tradable on a lot of the major exchanges, Binance, KuCoin, etc. I like it at this price, and I would rate this buy. Now, it is in a higher, especially if I were picking up blue chips, I would be picking up a bunch of this. I don't presently hold blue chips. I'm in the risky stuff. A lot of the market caps are in the low, like 10 million and below. A few exceptions to that is the OMI. Another one is Cardano, which Cardano is truly the only blue chip I hold right now, other than a tiniest bit of ETH and a tiniest bit of Bitcoin. I don't hold sizable amounts of those. Cardano is somewhat sizable, but most of my stuff is in the risky stuff. So do note that I'm not buying blue chips. If I was, I would be holding some Theta. It gets me really excited at these prices. And that's what I like to see. And it may go down further, and I just accept that. I just identify where my green zones are and where I'm excited about the price and where I think it's massively undervalued. And sometimes it comes down even lower. Realize I made such good money on Axie Infinity Land, and I did not buy it at the bottom. It reversed and went down at least 2/3 from where I bought it. And it still ended up doing 3000x from where I bought it. Now, had I bought it at the absolute low, which is almost an impossible expectation, I would have done even better, and that's okay. But I don't have that unrealistic expectation for myself that I'm always going to time the low. And I'm patient just to let the narrative play out and see if I was right or wrong. I end up being way right on that one. All right, let's take a look at Immutable X. This is another one of my favorite projects to keep an eye on, and the price is juicy.
Yeah, so again, this is one where we're still waiting from a broader technical point of view for the base to be over and for the new upward trend to kick in. What we have here is we had the beginnings of a trend line. So I didn't draw this in today. This was obviously from a previous show. But you can see how it's broken that trend line, which is a bit disappointing, but it's still within the scope of this being a base. So it's not the end. It's just, we just have to wait a bit longer, I suppose. 85 cents, key resistance there. That's been a little bit of a problem. So for me, that would be an eye-opening level. If it gets through there, it's like, whoa, okay, it's on the go. I wouldn't want to be chasing it above that, if you see what I mean, or much above, because it could be starting to run. Where it's got good support, where one could, if the, you know, like you're saying, you think that the fundamentals are really good, picking it up if it hits 50 cents, 50 to 51 cents, nice psychological level, nibbling it there is not a bad idea. But I don't like to buy things as they're falling. I like to wait for the base, as you know. So I'd rather be able to draw another trend line in at 51 and then watch it go up. break this downward trend line, and that for me would be my buy trigger. So what I'm saying here is, if it hits this support, then comes down and then starts to break this line, that for me is the indication that it's starting to turn, or at least try and turn. And if the rest of the market's turning as well, then all the better. So in summary, it's still in a big basing pattern. There could still be a lot of upside here, but I'm going to tread carefully in the short term until we get further confirmation. But again, this is a great time to be looking at this, because it hasn't run yet, and we need to put those levels in to know where we're going to react to it.
Yeah, I love that it's come back for another bite at the apple. Now, it's not at its lows, and it likely won't get there again, but it would be amazing if it did. The lows that it hit are back here in December of last year, and it hit below 40 cents. So it's still 50% up from that at 57 cents. But it might come back even cheaper. Now, where it is right now, there looks like there's about 55% in circulation. And so there's still some more tokens being vested. There's a lot of YouTubers, big YouTubers, or early stage investors like Elio Trades that got in on the pre-sale of Immutable X and say they're still holding, but they could dump at any time, and hopefully they do and bring this down to a cheaper price. I like Immutable X because it's getting a lot of adoption. So OMI is hosting their digital collectibles on Immutable X, and they're minting them on Immutable X. Gods Unchained, which is the network that really spawned off Immutable X to be able to have their own side chain, they're building on Immutable X. We have Illuvium, one of the biggest up and coming games in the blockchain gaming space, being on Immutable X, and a whole slew of others on Immutable X. Gods Unchained is one of the most successful, highest played games in blockchain gaming right now, and that's on Immutable X. So it's getting the kind of adoption I want to see for a future. It's just going through the bear market blues as well as vesting problems, right? When the tokens come out and then they vest to all the pre-sale investors, and some of the ecosystem tokens, often the project will sell those to fund further development. So that's what sometimes gives us these really, really low prices where the pendulum swings too far to the downside. Now, it topped out at about almost $10, and it's down close to 95% from that price. So I get really excited at this thing below 80 cents. It's amazing. And if it gets down even below current price at 57 cents, that's amazing. I definitely rate this as a high interest buy. It is in a market cap range I'm not extremely interested in normally. This one I am interested in, and I have some liquidity I hope to be able to free up in a month, some of that. And if so, I'll probably make a pretty sizable buy in Immutable X if the price stays about where it is now or goes below, even though I don't normally invest in this market cap range. For me, this is like, yeah, one that I really, really like for the future. And even though the market cap is so high already, I like the risk versus reward. I think something like this, even though it's entering baby blue chip category, can still go 20 to 50x from here. And if I'm really, really lucky, do something more like 100x, which would be amazing. It's got potential because as it comes back in, imagine down the road, Immutable X is talked about because Gods Unchained is getting massive additional traction, Illuvium or Vivi and OMI. And so people are talking about the chain that those are on. This blockchain could do really, really well during that time. It's also backed by Coinbase. You can buy it on Coinbase Exchange, which is one of the biggest, easiest to use exchanges out there in the crypto space. So investors that when they're first on-ramping into crypto during a bull run can easily get it. Binance has made it so a lot of people outside of the US can on-ramp funds directly to it. So it's got easy access as new people come into space for newbie buyers to be able to buy Immutable X. So yeah, definitely gets a buy for me. Let's jump over to RUNE.
Okay, so that would be Thorchain, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So if that is Thorchain,
Yep.
just to double check, yeah. So I'm sure we have actually looked at this before, but I don't know why there's no sort of technicals on it that have been sort of remnants of us talking about it before. But again, this is actually a very interesting chart compared to Immutable X because it's done a very similar thing in terms of coming into a corrective place and then suddenly had this rally, which is obviously exactly what you're looking for Immutable X. But it's already done it. So it's found support around this area here. I put in a zone between 77 cents and $1.16. And that was part of the prior upward trend. So where the big resistance point is at $2.96, that's where this triple tops are quite rare patterns, but it's 1, 2, 3. You see the way it broke downwards, and then that made this, or was the start of this downward trend. But that trend rate has eased off, so it's been going down and then slowly sort of easing off, and then it looks like it's taking off again, going back up again. So much like short positions have been in, people are starting to cover, and then it's like, actually maybe this is a good time to buy. But it's come back to good resistance here, which is around 195, 185, this sort of area here, in one kind of very sharp move. But it needs to actually break this area here, because although this is a nice move to the upside, it's not significant enough to indicate there's a big change in trend, i.e., it could just still be part of a range. So for me, I actually think I would, because we've got a bit of a cushion now and we've got a higher low, I would use this as a buy. I would think I would buy this, but I would also leave the door open for a bit of a correction before it actually takes out this 195 area. Simply because of this range, I think there'll be a few people who just want to exit their positions. They've been holding them long, maybe rotate them. But volume has been going up, which is a really good sign. And if it does come back to 116, I think that's a really solid support area. That could give us like the pullback to slingshot it back over 195, which is where it becomes really interesting. And I do think, given the way the overall chart has been trading, when the broader bull market starts to kick in, this should be correlated with it. So long-term targets I would expect to be, over this $3 area, and potentially, much higher. But we can talk about that when we get nearer to it. Where things go wrong, as far as I'm concerned, is I don't want to see it below $1, but certainly not below 90 cents. That's where warning bells start to go off that this is correcting too hard and there's something's gone wrong with the project. But for the moment, looking good, looking very good, but just potentially a pullback and then break of that 196 level would be really interesting. So again, it's a very good one to look at this point.
Yeah, this one's been in the news now. This is another one of these that went out of the spotlight for quite a long time and then has just recently returned in the spotlight. And it helps that Crypto Banter has been talking about this a lot, because a lot of this pump might be due to that. Big channels can have big influence like that. And it seems like they're always right, because they talk about it to their audience of 600,000 people. And then it pumps more and they're like, see, if you had watched the show, it's gone up 50% since we talked about it. But most of that 50% is actually their audience buying it and increasing the price. Though I don't disagree with him that RUNE is a great long-term project. Now, Thorchain or RUNE use the idea that OneChain created of this idea of Stormin nodes, or single-sided liquidity pools, in order to allow for swapping between chains or swapping between assets. And so Uniswap has a method of creating, you have to create a double-sided pool in order to then create a way to swap tokens. Thorchain does it where you can stake just one single asset, similar to how OneChain did it. And OneChain really led that innovation, and Thorchain saw a good idea and copied it to create a back end, kind of like a Uniswap, except you only need to put in one single asset. So you don't have as much risk of what they call what is it called, where one goes up, impermanent loss. So really good idea. And the hope is that you could connect a bunch of front ends to this back end and essentially have liquidity for exchanges through what Thorchain has created, and that you could create as many front ends for this liquidity as possible. And I love the idea. And supposedly a bunch of the team has been private or anonymous, which always increased the risk on any project. But supposedly some of them might be some of the programmers behind Binance, who are trying to create a way that's an uncensorable way that governments can't shut it down. Like we are seeing governments have come in and told Uniswap to delist Hex, and they did. So that means Uniswap is not uncensorable. So far, the only things completely uncensorable is Bitcoin and a few other things where they have an anonymous team. And so Thorchain's team being anonymous means the federal government doesn't know who to reach out to try to get them to delist something like Hex or other things. And so if there's a liquidity pool is created for Hex, well, then that would be tradable. So I like this project. I would love to see this project succeed. I love it at this price. Now, it was twice as cheap. And maybe if we're lucky, it will come back down for another bite at the apple, and it may not. So that's always the risk that we see. It is in a market cap range that's higher than I normally buy. I'm not presently holding any RUNE unless I still have some sitting on an exchange I haven't looked at in a while. If I do, it would only be like several $1,000s. It's not a sizable position for me. It's one that I really, really like, though, and I would rate it a buy. And if it comes back down, then if I were buying a lot in this price range, I would just be dollar cost averaging and more. Below $3 is actually my green zone on this. So we're well below the $3 range, because I expect this one will probably break previous highs and hopefully do much better than that. So it's down over 90%. It's down like 92% or something, even at this. Now it got really juicy at like 84 cents. We're just no longer at 84 cents. So you have to make your decision with where things are at now. Cool. I like Thorchain for the future. I'd love to see this project succeed, even them being an anonymous project. There's a lot of people who are deep in the industry that believe heavily in this project. All right, let's take a look at SUI, which has been pumping recently.
Sure. Not one that has too much data on it, so I think we have to tread very carefully on whether, I've not heard of it before. So having just looked at it a few minutes before the show was starting, I don't know whether there's history somewhere else or whether it's changed or whatever that might be. So perhaps we can discuss that. But in terms of just the data that I've got from June, obviously it's not a whole lot, but the trend had been down from when it started. And this pattern here, descending triangles, usually a very good percentage chance of it going low, which it did. Now, what's happened is it's gone lower, it's broken lower from its trigger point, technical trigger point, which was around 60 cents. And it's had a sharp move down and a rally back up to that trigger point. So it's almost like we've gone full circle. We've come back up to retest it. Now, usually this area here, which is where I've drawn this line at sort of 60 cents, that would be a selling opportunity to, if you hadn't sold it, to resell it. So there should be some good resistance at this point. So that will tell us whether the market is actually going to struggle to get through this, or whether it just retests the downside again. Overall, I would be extremely careful until it can at least break this descending triangle line, like the resistance from the descending triangle, because all the highs are still falling. Even though this is interesting, I do like the fact that it's gone up aggressively and there's definitely some life in there. I just don't want to jump on it until we see a little bit more evidence, and I have to be a bit more cautious with something that has less history as well. But again, if this is going to start to run, I would want it on the radar right now. And for me, this is around 65, 66 cents. Close over that would be my signal to jump in with the first sort of initial position. And then if it gets the other side of the 60 cents, that argument works the other way, because then it would be really good support. So buying at 66 cents, knowing that it shouldn't get below 60 cents on the other side, for me, is a trading strategy. But right here, right now, I think I'd have to wait.
All right. So I agree with that sentiment. Now, if we look at the last 7 days, it's like, oh my gosh, this one is taking off and going to the moon. We provide some additional context, and it's like, okay, it hasn't been all that long, like you mentioned. There's not a lot of data on it, and the circulating supply is 7.2% of the full total supply, meaning the fully diluted market cap is gigantic compared to where the market cap is. So this is one I'd wait on, even though I like what SUI is doing. If I understand SUI right, one of the challenges for blockchain gaming is that in-game assets often need to be their own object. So think about a sword. In a lot of games, you can upgrade the sword, so you can infuse gems to it or do something that upgrades it. Well, what you have to do with most blockchains is you have to actually burn that asset and create a new asset or mint a new asset. Their idea behind it is to make objects upgradable, if I understand it correctly. So dynamic assets that you own, SUI's object-centric data model allows digital assets and their attributes to live on-chain and outside of smart contracts. This allows them to be upgradable. Now, is it secure? Well, that's what they say: secure assets, secure contracts, secure transactions. It's not been out long enough for us to really know. I'm concerned at the charts and the vesting that probably will have more corrections down and be punished further. Now, maybe it doesn't play out that way. Maybe it turns around and goes up, but it's so early in the stage with so little vested that I just like other prospects better, where I think their risk is lower than what I see as the risk of the price probably continuing to fall. So I would rate this, actually, if I had some, I would probably sell. And maybe I'm wrong on that. Maybe I'm wrong, but it just did this run up. I would sell and then hope to be able to buy back later for to get more of it. I like where they're going. I haven't seen an interview with the team yet, which would be the next step of my analysis on them, is see an interview with the team, see how much I like their vision for what they're doing, see if it's different enough. We're still seeing some layer 1 and layer 2 blockchains come into the space, but in the future, that's going to be a really hard niche for new blockchains to really have a chance, because there's so much out there already that's getting use. It's going to be a really, really competitive space, and it's harder and harder for new players to come in and take large market share there. All right, so let's jump over to the next one, which would be Bumper. We've talked about Bumper a lot lately.
Yeah, Bumper again. I'm pretty convinced that this will track the upward trend in the majors, because the more people have or have joined the bull market, the more they'll want to hedge their positions, given the use case of the actual project itself. And it seems to have mirrored the correction most recently. But overall, I think the structure of the chart is still bullish, and it still looks like it's in a basing phase. It was attempting to break out this resistance, which was a very good place for it to extend the move if it could have done it. But obviously we're not in that early or we're not in the midst of this big sort of parabolic move in all crypto assets as yet. So it may have been a bit early for that, and I think we talked about that. But it would have been nice if it had managed to break that resistance, because I think there would have been more buyers who would have joined the trend at that point. But it's correcting back down. I think around 55 cents is good support level. I would expect that to hold. It may come a little bit lower with Bitcoin and ETH going a bit lower, but definitely higher lows. So pattern of higher lows, trend up. That's fine. And this is, I think, part of a inverse head and shoulders. There's left shoulder, head, right shoulder. Okay, it's making a bit of a meal of the right shoulder, but that's to be expected in this sort of short-term macro environment. But yeah, overall, still a buy and looking for support around 55 cents. Or sorry, 0.055 cents, I should say.
Yeah, perfect. I had a question. Carl was asking, where can you buy it? The easiest place to buy it is Uniswap. The trading fees on Uniswap are down just because there's not a lot of transactions happening on the ETH network. So ETH network transaction fees are low. You can also buy it on Bitmart. So they were listed on Bitmart. And I think one other even smaller exchange, though I don't remember which one it was. So you can see here, a lot of times if you'll go to CoinMarketCap, it will show you the markets for it, but it isn't reflecting Bitmart yet or the other one. So right now it's only showing you Uniswap version 2 and Uniswap version 3 is where you can buy it. That's not updated yet with the other ones. So we do know that it was listed on Bitmart here. I haven't traded on Bitmart yet, so I can't say I know Bitmart well. A few things on Bumper, like their price has come back down for another bite of the apple, and it was pushing 10 cents right here. So now it's on a 38% discount from there. I like this project. I like where it's at. Maybe we're lucky and it comes down cheaper. I identified this as one of my highest buys right at the bottom here when it was like 2 to 2.4 cents. It was so cheap, and I was super excited that it ever hit that price. I don't think it ever should have, but sometimes prices get reached that never should have happened because the pendulum swings too far. And when tokens are punished in their first bear market with additional token investing on top of it, sometimes that combination of those two things help you reach prices that are just astronomically low. And so I was excited about that and bought some more here. And I've been buying on the way down, and here I picked up a bunch. And I've accumulated more since. So right now we're at a juicy price again. I like it at this. Do I know if Bumper is going to succeed? I would put Bumper in like everything in crypto is high risk. So just understand that when I say the risk levels, that's just considering that everything is high risk. So then we're just comparing these against other crypto projects. And I would put Bumper in a medium to high risk. It's a low cap altcoins, and these can fail. They're about to launch their mainnet, which is coming up, and you can see that here. Well, let me just go to the main Bumper site, and you can see the countdown here. So in 7 days, 20 hours. Now, often when things actually do launch, their price then retraces because everyone's they're super excited it's going to launch. But like Paul always says, you say buy the rumor, sell the news?
Yeah, buy the rumor, sell the fact.
Sell the fact, and the fact will be here in like 7 days. And so obviously a lot of people usually do that, and the price comes down cheaper, which is great. I'm accumulating Bumper for the long term, which is when the rains come in and the bull market happens and people go absolutely crazy, and all these new people come into crypto and they're just throwing money everywhere because they don't know what they're doing, and they chase anything that's running up. And that's the kind of market I'm waiting for. So if Bumper comes down and gets cheaper in the short term, well, fantastic. And it might. I mean, so we still have 7 days to launch. If we're really, really lucky, it'll come below 5 cents and go even cheaper. That would be great. I would love for that to happen. Will it? My magic crystal ball I bought at Walmart doesn't work. So I don't know if it will. I just hope it will. And people say, oh, why would you want a token that you own a whole bunch of? And I do, to come down cheaper. And it's because, well, I want to buy even more of it. I'm not planning on selling it at these prices. I'm going to sell it later when the market goes absolutely crazy and hope that Bumper performs really well by then. You can also earn some bump couple ways. There's going to be incentives. So when this launches in 7 days, incentives for early users in the bumper protocol. So you can take some USDC and you can stake that or provide that liquidity for the protocol and earn some bump tokens by doing that, plus a return on your USDC. So you get two benefits. You get a return on your stablecoin as well as some bump tokens. And this article explains it. Basically, if you go to Bumper's website or their Twitter account, you can find more details on how you can grab a share of 250,000 worth of bump rewards. And so it shows you how these are calculated. You can see that the early days, the rewards are really, really high. So watch for that launch coming up in 7 days, because this is going to be a great way to earn some extra incentives. Secondly, you can earn some if you join this. I think you can link to this from their Twitter. I've also posted some links to how you can join this, but essentially the leaderboards, by completing some quests, the top person is going to earn 2,000 bump tokens. The second person is going to earn 1,500. And there's just some different quests that you can go through and complete to get up on the leaderboards. And there's 20 days left on this. A lot of these things that you can knock out to start to get caught up to these guys in a matter of 4 or 5 days. So yeah, just some thoughts for those trying to earn some bump for free, that you have a lot of time on your hands, but you don't have a lot of money. Well, then jump in here and earn some for free. Yeah. Back to price. Love it at this price. Would love it if it gets cheaper, and probably it'll probably come down some more is my guess. And so for me, it's a buy for a longer hold, right? So realize their launch is coming up in 7 days. Things often come down cheaper during that time. And if so, fantastic. So gosh, would I love it if it went to 2.5 cents again? I would absolutely freaking love it. So that's where that's at. Let's jump over to WAN. Now, do notice that both Bumper and WAN are strategic partners of the channel, and they give us tokens to give away on our Friday live stream. So last Friday live stream, we gave away 500 Bumper and we gave away 500 WAN. I'm so selective on who I'll accept for strategic partners in both WAN and Bumper. I really, really like the teams behind it, and I really, really like the risk versus potential reward, at least as I see them. So they're one of the few, and I get a lot of offers that I could say yes to do anything with. I'm so selective on that. I got reached out like 5 times the last week by different projects, and so far said no to all of them. All right. Yeah, I could make a lot more money by taking on all these different projects. But one of the things I've always promised this channel is to do my best to bring you only what I feel like is the best, especially when it's at a good price. All right, let's look at the last one, which is WAN. Take a look at the analysis.
So overall, it's still in a consolidation, and we're waiting for this base to play out. It's clearly a market that would, or a coin that would do very well when volumes go up, and it will retrace potentially in the short term when volumes go down. But overall, it's forming the space, and I think it will do very well in the next sort of bull phase. I'm interested to sort of potentially pick some up against support here, around 16 cents. If it does get back to this area here, 14 cents, we've got a support line that's coming in. Technically, I'd have to let it go if it closed below that, and just to see how it plays out, if it can get back over it. Where I start to get excited and wanting to add to the position would be over 25 cents and then 32. That's where the big resistance is. And that would create this double bottom pattern that would also indicate this basing phase is over and we're now into an impulsive trend. So there's still time to look at it in terms of the way it's trading against support. And it's on the fence slightly about whether we wait or buy it, I would say. But this support is held up pretty nicely. So that, and I also can see why it might be coming down a little bit given what's happened in the bigger picture. So nibbling a bit here is, not a bad idea from my perspective. But again, I would like that as a marker so I can add more and feel comfortable about buying more as it goes up, because it would, for me, be averaging as the price goes up. Obviously we've got this, for me, the protection of this trend line as well, the support line, because I have to think of a place where I would get out, where I'd have to get out and then look to re-enter. And that line there provides that for me. So if it does get close to it, yeah, I'd expect it to have a bounce there. But for the moment, it's still playing out in this range. And this range has been going on for quite some time, it has to be said. It's been pivoting around this sort of 20 cents area. So short-term traders will be looking to buy it and sell it within that range, just because it's sort of oscillating like that. But we will see a longer-term breakout at some point, and it's just a question of whether we get an indication that it's going to happen, or if it just happens very quickly. So for the moment, still a buy, but it's still oscillating in this range.
Yeah. So I like it at this price a ton. And sometimes the market gives us these opportunities that are just incredible. Now, it's not as low as it was, which it hit these ridiculous lows of like 13 cents. And I don't know that it will get back there, though I would love for it to get back even near there. And to me, near there is 17 cents where it's at. Now, remember, we looked at RUNE, and RUNE used technology really innovated by WAN chain, but WAN chain has a different function than RUNE. WAN chain is creating the best cross-chain platform for sending tokens across and sending liquidity across different chains. And I really feel like they have the best technology for it. And that's really starting to show up, and that people are noticing it, though it hasn't hit it hasn't come into the massive narrative where everyone's talking about it yet. But I feel like their team is completely top notch. They have some of the best security and other frameworks behind it, and they've been working tirelessly behind the scenes. And they were massively in the narrative in 2018, and everybody was talking about them. And the charts went absolutely crazy way back then. The price went all the way. In fact, this doesn't even show the price back then. But in 2018, the price went almost to $10. In the last bull market, it didn't even come into the narrative, and it still went to 250. And so it's down over 90% since then. It's down 95% from that high. So if it goes to its original all-time highs of $10, it's got such an amazing upside from here. If it just goes back to the next, its second high, that's still a 20x from here. But I think WAN chain is one of those gems that a lot of people have forgotten about and haven't paid attention to how good of a product that they've built, where you can use their WAN chain bridge to send from all these different networks, and they continue to expand it. In fact, really big news that they expanded it to include Cardano, which is fantastic. So they're using their storm and node idea to handle liquidity, to be able to bridge tokens across the networks. And I feel like this is the best technology out there, and they will at some point come into the narrative. And if that happens, their price is going to go absolutely crazy. And so their price is really down at a cheap price. And it was just recently 34 cents. So it's half off from there. For me, it is massively a buy at this price. And I do own WAN chain, and I've owned it for a long time. Let's see what the market cap is. I feel like their market cap is ridiculously low for how good their technology is. And I love opportunities like that. Like that happens in the crypto space all the time, where the deals just get so juicy that so many people just pass them up because they seem too good to be true. $35 million market cap, essentially. Most of their tokens are in circulation. I think this is an extremely juicy one. You can see here where it went to, it only reflects $9.20 at the high here, but it did hit higher than that. All right. So for me, it's definitely a buy. Let's see. We did have a question about Bumper, let's see. So initially Bumper said that they were more efficient than Black-Scholes. Is that still the narrative, or are they equally efficient? So the challenge was, I think there was some misunderstandings on what they meant by that. So they're not more efficient than Black-Scholes, which is the architecture that does the pricing, but they are more efficient than the options platforms that use Black-Scholes. So they've clarified that recently, that like they're not more efficient than the algorithms that use that show how to price things. But by the time those providing, when you use that algorithm to go to an options desk and buy options to hedge your risk, well, they're way more efficient than using the options to hedge your risk. On average, there is greater cost savings by using Bumper's protocol based on what their analysis has shown. And so that's what they're referring to, in that they're more efficient. They're not more efficient than the algorithm. They're more efficient than the options desk that use that algorithm. And so if you're trying to hedge your risk, your downside risk, then they're just a cheaper way to do it than either insurance or options. Great question. There was another question on, I think way up on, was it Bumper or OMI or something? That if we have just a second, we'll go ahead and answer that. This one. Bump price, where is it going? Down more, hoping to buy mine at near as low as possible before it heads back up. Thanks, guys. Yeah, that's a hard one to tell. Any guesses on where the bottom might be? Paul, do you have any guesses? Because I don't know. I just hope it gets as cheap as it once was. Paul, do you have any guesses on Bumper's price, where it might bottom?
Not really. I don't try to. I let the market tell me, but it has. It made a low around the low of the broader market in November, which sort of mirroring the majors, which is kind of what I'd expect it to do, really. So, it depends how far back the majors come in the next sort of few weeks and months, but I think I'm more confident about the longer term as to it being, as the majors being higher and this actually mirroring those. So rather than trying to pick the absolute low, personally, what I would be doing is buying a little bit and then waiting, and then if it gets cheaper I can buy some more, and if it doesn't, I've bought some. So that would be my strategy. But yeah, I can't predict where the absolute low would be, unfortunately.
Yeah, I know. It's hard for me to say. This might be the lowest it gets from here, but it could go cheaper, and it could go to the previous lows. It could even break below that. And if so, that would be a dream come true, because hopefully other things I have are somewhat up relative to that, and it makes it easier for me to sell some other things and position them in an asset that I think is massively underpriced. Sometimes those opportunities come up. That's what I love about diversification, is sometimes I have something else that's going a little bit crazy, and I can take profits on that and roll it into something that's massively underpriced, in my opinion. Cool. Thanks for joining us, Paul. We appreciate your time and love your analysis.
It's my pleasure. Sorry, I was getting a bit of glitching in terms of the stream, so I wasn't sure if it was just at my end. Hopefully everybody watching the show, it will have it all coming through nice and clean. But for me, it was just glitching there just a little bit, so I didn't quite catch everything that you said. But it's always a pleasure, and interesting markets. Let's look for the long term, and August is nearly over. So thanks again. Thanks for the picks, and I'll see you next week.
All right. Thanks, Paul. Yeah, the market's at new lows, or not new lows, but I guess recent lows. And people get in despair during this time. I get excited. I've been through these cycles before, 20 years of real estate and other investing. and then just 6 years in crypto, which isn't a long time and is at the same time. So this cycle has played itself out for me a couple times now, and these times I get excited. Now, I would love it if the markets get punished some more and things come down even cheaper. That may happen. And if so, well then fantastic, because usually before the major run-up can happen, there's this punish cycle that almost creates utter despair in most everyone, and then it's ready to run up. So there were a lot of people getting bullish a week ago and saying, it's just going to go up from here. I'm going to take some longs. When I see a whole bunch of people getting longs, going long, I get a little bit worried, because usually there's some big whales that have enough money to take the other side of that trade, to then sell into it, to force the prices down, maybe even release some bad news or call their friends in the press to release some bad news. And then, well, it goes down, wipes out a lot of those longs. They make a bunch of money, and then it's ready to run. Seems like that's what's been playing out. I don't get invited to those chats by the billionaires and, deca billionaires who play those whale games. Maybe someday they'll invite me to the chat so I could get some advance warning. But I know that happens, and so that's why a lot of people refer to them as whales. We're all just minnows. Like, unless you're worth 100 million or $1 billion, we're basically minnows in the ocean. And when a whale swims by you, it can totally, the turbulence just spins you around, and like you can't tell which way is up. And that happens in this space. And some people get totally turned around by that. They panic, sell out, and they leave. Just know that that happens, and that's why there's so much money to be made in the space. And that makes me excited, because prices get too astronomically low. That's what creates the opportunity. That's the reason I'm here. That's the reason I was able to make life-changing wealth this last cycle. And this cycle is going to be even better. We'll see y'all next time. This wrap is for all of you.
Came into the space, chasing all of the gains, chasing the pumps and all of the hype trains. But like in life, shit bad before you could. Was told to buy when it was pouring like a rainmaker should. I buy when it's down, don't chase the boats that I miss. Cause I always make the time in mind. I stick the one out cause I'm patient like that, and I'll wait for the right time. I sell when it's high, I buy when it's low. They call me rich, they call me smart. I'm just a rainmaker running the show. Calculated investments, I don't lead with my heart. The principles are simple, they're leaving a mark. Buy when it's boring, just gotta be smart. I sell when it's hype, like all the channels they pump it. That's when I was selling, go parabolic and dump it. They call me rich, they call me smart. I'm a rainmaker, making my own start. I'm with the future, learning the past. Makes the time fly by, years going so fast. The game plan is mine, I'll own it now. When I reach the top, haters asking me how. Cause I'm a rainmaker, investments I love, and I follow what I learn, not relying on luck. Time is never better, the time like the present. This next 5 years is a gift and it's feeling like heaven. I'm committed to learn, studying to know that nothing comes easy, but with knowledge the game show. Sticking out this wrong, cause soon will come a bear market. Learning and growing, and when it's slow will be the target. They say it's come out, Bitcoin is dead. The massive decreases can get to your head. Sticking around, the time is better. Strong like that, I'll let the others be fretters. 2 years time, the ball will bring back the gains. That makes it worth the effort, cause here comes the rain. So let's go rainmakers, let's make it all happen. They go with the hate, say the haters be crapping. I'm here for 5 years, let's do this together. The time is right, the time could be better. They call me rich, they call me smart. I'm a rainmaker, making my own start. I'm with the future, learning the past. Makes the time fly by, years going so fast. The game plan is mine, I'll own it now. When I reach the top, haters asking me how. Cause I'm a rainmaker, investments I love, and I follow what I learn, not relying on luck. Haters be hating, the time to slow down. Addressing what they say when I'm wearing my crown. They're chasing green candles like someone who was new. I got a vision that was bigger, helping me to push through. I'm still human and sometimes it is rough, and that's what makes me special, simply I stay tough. Cause I'm a rainmaker, investments I love, and I follow what I learn, not relying on